My name is Linda Whitener, and I'm going to present this year-end prep to you. And we're going to go through this PowerPoint, and I don't like to spend a lot of time on the PowerPoints because I like to get into the software, and we have just this hour. And so I still hear people coming on, so we're going to give them just another minute or so. And I know they usually do an introduction, but I've been a certified consultant for about 16 or 17 years. When I had looked at the list, I had seen a lot of people that, you know, I didn't know the names and all, and that's just great to get in touch with new people and everything and helping y'all through this year end. But I was also a user, so I was on y'all's side of things for the 15 years prior to that. So all in all, over 30 years on Timberline. But I do want y'all to know I was only 10 years old when I started. So, you know, I'm not as old as I sound. So I think, you know, like I said, we'll, you know, if everybody will probably start muting themselves again unless somebody had an urgent question before we even get started. But there will be time for questions at the end, and I'll go through this, hopefully not too fast, but so that everybody can, you know, get the gist of it. And then it's what we recommend, you know, if you have any questions, because this is just kind of, you know, to put the little bug in your ear about, you know, these things, but then, of course, you know, get direction from your consultant, call us, whatever that we can do to help you and get you through this year end. I do have one question. If you could just respond by voice, are there a lot of new first-time year-enders out there right now? Okay, so I didn't hear anybody. So that kind of drives how I want to approach this. So, but then if we have questions at the end and y'all are first timers that have come in, then I'll be happy to go into a little bit more detail as time permits. So we're going to get started here. It's 9:04. So this is the Sage year-end prep, and it's being brought to you by OnPoint Construction Software. And again, my name is Linda Whitener. So that's the little introductions that, like I said, that Carrie and them usually do. So the agenda, we're going to go through what is supported at this year end, and because they usually limit that to the two versions, the one that has been out for about a year and the one that is just now coming out. Going to go through what the year-end processing looks like in payroll and accounts payable. Talk to you a little bit about some reconciliation reports that can be done, and just some ideas on that, some tips and tricks. We'll discuss briefly also the ACA, which this is its second year now, and so I know last year was had a lot of issues. I mean, it had for everybody. And then we'll go and have a question and answer time. So which are the supported versions? What makes sense? So hopefully everybody can see this good enough here. The supported versions are 15.1 and 16.1. The 16.1 was released earlier this fall. It is out since September, and those are the only two versions that will be supported at year end. And you do have to upgrade to one of these versions if you're not on them in order to produce your 1099s and your W-2s. We want to bring your attention that there are some filing deadline changes. So these are now due at July 31st, 2017. And these are the ones here that are due. Now the W-2s to the employees and the 1099s to recipients, that has always been that way. The ACA forms to employees have always been the 31st. But now the W-2 information to the government and the 1099 information to the government are also due by January 31st. Then February 28th, if filing by mail, these forms here are due, and then the 31st, if you're filing electronically, you have to the 31st to get those. This is a year-end workflow that I had pulled up from Sage, and there's one part, or I think is on the payroll one, where they didn't update the year, but I just thought I'd go ahead and add it kind of so that you can get an idea of the workflow. Because for the 1099s, you of course want to print the last checks of the year, and if you go up to the top, then you of course want to make sure everything is reconciled in accounts payable, get your backup done, and then upgrade to the year-end version, which when you do that, I mean, you're doing it for accounts payable and payroll and the whole software, but it is important that you have to upgrade to the newest version before generating your 1099s. And then in the system, the next route you need to take is you always get a backup, and then you can close your 1099 year. And there's two different ones. There's the close the 1099 year here, and then there's also closing the fiscal year. Some people, you can find those in the AP settings of what the year ends are. Some of them have them both set to the calendar year, which the 1099 year is always a calendar year, but your fiscal year may be your true fiscal year of your company. You have all year to close those, but just do it before the start of that. So like now we're coming up to 2016 end of year. You have had all this year to close 2015, but definitely do it before you write a check for 2017. Because if you wrote a check and it hadn't been moved, it will mess up the buckets that are in the master file. So you might just check those now and see that they're not back in 2014 or something prior to that. So after you close the 1099 year, then you can print AP checks in the new year. And then optional, you can move checks to history and remove vendors. And there are some knowledge-based articles here with their numbers that can help you through that on, you know, when you should do it, how you do it, and what's recommended.
Mine's working.
And then we have the payroll year-end workflow. So, of course, upgrading to the new version. Then you want to make sure that everything, all the checks that were dated from December 2016 and prior have been posted. So you're wanting to make sure in your new file that you do have all your checks posted. You take a backup, close your year in payroll, and then you can begin entering time for the first payroll of the new year. And then you can also, you want to download and update your taxes, and then process and print and post your new checks And this is where I was saying it says 2014 checks, but that would be 2017 checks. Then up top, you want to reconcile, and I have a listing of some reports about reconciliation. Do your backup and generate the W-2s and also the quarterly reports. And we'll talk about that order of how to do things on those in just a moment. And then optional, if you want to move checks to history and move out any of your terminated employees. And there's the knowledge base articles that go along with those. And it's very, very important that you don't move any checks to history that were for like this year, 2016, prior to running your quarterly reports and your W-2s. So no checks for 2016 dates should be in your history file right now, because when you do the quarterly reports, it's pulling from those check records. So if they had been moved to history, there's no way that you can gather the information from that history file and get it onto your quarterly reports. So here are some considerations prior to upgrading. If you are on version 13 or prior, you have to go to version 14, at least to version 14, and then you could go to 15 or 16. So then on the other side of that, version 14 and 15 may go directly to version 16. And don't forget about upgrading and allowing the time for upgrading your estimating programs if you have those, and your document management. Those are on a separate upgrade. You want to check compatibility of any other software solutions that integrate with Sage to make sure that they are compatible with the version that you choose to go to, either 15 or 16. For instance, I know TimberScan just came out now to where they are compatible with version 16. Just a little bit ago, of course, since 16 is just now coming out, they were not compatible with version 16 yet. Here are some things that we want to make you aware of. Is you should skip version 15 if you use purchasing and inventory, if you have multiple data folder environment. If you do choose to go to 16, Sage does have a fix for this, but you'd have to get with Sage about getting that fix installed on your server. They would send you a patch to install. And then do not upgrade to version 16 if you use residential management or if you use Office Connector or My Assistant. And that is as of today, and Sage is working on a fix, but it is because of the new Simba ODBC driver that we'll talk about in a second that Office Connector and My Assistant is not compatible with yet. So you do not want to go to 16 if you are using those. You want to prepare for the upgrade, making sure that you have a system, your server and your workstations meet or exceed the recommended requirements. You want to read the software release notes. They have the notes and the important. There's always that one sheet of paper that says important at the top, and you want to look at those documents before doing the upgrade. And when you download it, those documents should be in that packet, or you can retrieve them off the website. You want to make sure if excuse me, if you are using the Sage desktop and you have a personalized desktop configuration, you want to make sure where it's located before you do the upgrade, so that after the upgrade that you can make sure that you get that desktop configuration back on your system. And if I forget, I didn't have this one written down, just somebody, if you would unmute me when we go into the software, and I'll show you where that is. You can use this article, knowledge base article, to learn more about the 16.1 Sage desktop. You can also get release documents from these three areas. You can go on to the Sage website. Then these other two here are after the upgrade has been installed, so that once you've made that decision to upgrade, you can go and print out these documents and give them out to the people that are the users, because then that lets them know what has changed in their modules that they use and what has been upgraded and some new features. They want to look at that instead of just stumbling across it someday in the future. They want to be able to read about that. So from any application, you can go to help, and then you'll see product documents. Or if you're on the Sage desktop, there's tasks and product documents. Some of the features, new features in version 16, which is the latest release, it is compatible with Windows 10. And so if you have a lot of workstations that want to go to Windows 10, then this one is compatible with that. And here's the Simba ODBC driver. The reports are supposed to run faster with this latest Simba ODBC driver. So hopefully that's regular report design reports and the Crystal reports. There is a more modernized and desktop, and it's also supposed to run and load faster than the desktop that they used to have. And here's one place where I didn't change it. After the upgrade, at first I thought that the TS main icon is just going to be replaced and not be there anymore, but it does go away. You don't have the option to launch Timberline from TS main. If a lot of you are out there using that, you have to start up the desktop first, and then you'll see a TS main icon in there and can use it from there, and then go in what we now call the old way, but it's a lot of people still use the TS main. So eventually, get prepared, because I'm not sure if it's in version 17 or if it will be in version 18. They will ultimately get rid of TS main. So this is their first step in doing that, getting you to launch the Sage desktop and then go to TS main from there. Sage does report that version 16 is more stable than version 15. So you're asking the question now, should I or shouldn't I go to version 16? So now that we've told you the differences, version 16 is a new release. It came out just in September of 2016. Usually it's recommended that you wait a little while and, maybe like after the first quarter or something next year to go to the release that just came out in the previous September, just to let everybody that really has a very strong reason for going to the newest version. Let them test it out, make sure that, you know, they get any little quirks figured out in the software, and then go to it. But Sage is saying that this is more stable than version 15. So, and then another thing to consider is because TS Main is only accessible through the desktop, you need to let your users know and prepare them for that change. So ultimately, it's up to you how your office is configured and what do you think is best for you if you go to 15 or 16. And I'll also try to show you, because I'm set on version 15, and so I will show you one place where it does look different when we get into the software. So now on to the actual year-end processing. I didn't hear a lot of new users that were out there at the time when I asked, but as you all know, Atrix is the only way to process quarterly reports and the year-end reporting in both accounts payable and payroll. So you have to go through Atrix. You don't have to have them submit it for you. You can print out the documents and do all that, but you do have to go through the Atrix forms. On payroll, one of the tips would be you want to reconcile the 4 quarters before finalizing your W-2 reporting. Some people think, oh, I'll get my W-2s out there so that my employees can get them real quick and then come back and do the 4th quarter after that. That's definitely not a recommended way. And because you want to do the 4th quarter reporting first and then take all those 4 quarters, add them up, and then do your W-2 so that you know that your W-2s are correct. In accounts payable, if you run the 1099 preparation report, I usually suggest to run it twice. Once for everybody that receives a 1099 so that you can make sure that yes, they all do get 1099s. I have all the correct information and we have addresses and we have everything we need. But don't stop there. Run it again and say, show me everybody that does not receive a 1099. Make sure that there is nobody on that list that should be on the one that receives a 1099. So here are some reports for year-end reconciliation. So of course we want accounts payable to reconcile to the general ledger, so you'll print an open items report as of the end of the month, the end of the year, and reconcile that to your AP account balance in the general ledger. And then doing the same for accounts receivable, running it for the end of the month and making sure that it balances to the AR accounts in general ledger. I mean, that's pretty much something that everybody does every month, at least every quarter. But then we want to reconcile our job cost to the general ledger. So there is a report out there in job cost under entries, GL reconciliation. And this one, the one that's a default with the program, is a detailed one. You're going to see all of the entries that are out there that make up the numbers. And you can have your consultant, I do it on every installation that I've done, I make this a summary report to have it summarized by the GL account. And so that way I can compare what this report says, what the activity was in that GL account, to what my general ledger says that the activity was for that GL account. There's about 3 different options that you can choose when you're running that report. The main thing is only fill in the accounting dates. So if you're reconciling it for the year, it'd be January 1 to 12/31. And that's the only thing you want to fill in. You don't want to give it your range of cost of sales accounts or anything else like that, because you want the system to tell you where things went to. And so you want to make sure that you don't see some G&A account on that listing. So when you're running that report, only fill out the accounting dates that you want. For payroll, we want to reconcile to the general ledger. So there is a report out there under reconciliation. It's called labor cost by account and job. And so this is going to give you the costs out there by GL account. But most of the time it's used for, job reporting. So you want to delete the job condition. You go to the little conditions button and it says job NE blank. You want to delete that at print time. So it leaves it in the report design, but it only deletes it for this one print time, because then it will give you all cost, whether they were charged to a job or not. In cash management, we want to reconcile cash management to general ledger. And of course, we have the bank reconciliation that you run after you've reconciled that bank account. But you also want to compare that reconciled balance to the general ledger. Make sure that the general ledger says the same thing as what that bank rec said. Then there's also another report that you can run at any time to make sure that everything is in balance, and that is under reconciliation at CM balance to GL. Just make sure that all the entries for the particular cash accounts have been posted in general ledger, and then that CM balance to GL should always balance. If not, then either something is entered wrong, or maybe some of the times the buckets can get messed up in cash management, and that's a simple fix. But we would run some tests and some reports to see, what's exactly wrong with it in cash management. And I'll go through again when we get into the software, and we'll show you where some of these reports are. So on the ACA, you need to get your plan information from your insurance company, gather all the information on the specific employees, and we need to there's some setups in Sage that we can fill out, and then we need to get it to tracking the employees properly. And then there's some canned reports that if you didn't add them to your menu last year, you can add them this year. And so there's a couple of items that we want you to be aware of. We call them some ACA gotchas. And in 2015, the ACAs printed for all employees that were in the master file, whether they were terminated or not. So what some people did, if somebody didn't work there in at least 2015, because this was last year, we moved those employees to history, because not everybody moves out their employees when they're gone. You can have employees that haven't worked for you in a few years, but your choice that you want to keep them in your master file. Well, they were getting the 1095s printed on each one of them. And also what we'd seen when 2016 first started is that the 2015 information didn't roll forward. So whatever their status was at December of 2015, it didn't go forward to 2016. It's like you had to do the setup all again. Sage is aware of these two issues, and they're working on a fix. Now, if the fixes on these come in with this year-end update, we don't know until that comes out or we receive some information from Sage. So just the recommendation is know about these two particular items here and watch for information coming from Sage, and then looking at it after you upgrade to either version 15 or version 16. So I think, I did add another slide here. The Atrix Pricing, just some people aren't aware of the different pricing options. Of course, there's a la carte. You want to e-file a report, they'll charge you $7.95, I think it is, per each filing. I mean, you could do that if you wanted to. Or there's a package that you can buy that's unlimited filings during the year. So this is only for the 4 quarters. You can file any number of federal and state reports, the new hire report, anything of that is your quarterly filings. The main thing to be aware of is that the year end to process W-2s is not included in that unlimited filings package that if you purchase that. The W-2 and 1099 filings are always separate. So usually for W-2s, it's around, I think last year it was $1.89 per employee. So after you run through doing the W-2s, and when you log in to Atrix, it'll tell you, prior to that, it tells you how much it will be if you choose some different options. And that $1.89 is for when you want them to send out to the employees. Now they will file the federal W-2 stuff, that's free of charge, but to send it out to each employee, that's $1.89. When I did research on it several years ago, it ended up being about $1, what I called convenience fee, because your envelopes and your W-2s and the stamps roughly was the 80-something cents. And so it's the dollar they send out everything. Once you go through the process of doing the W-2s and you hook up with them and say send them out, and you've got your copies, the employer copies, saved to a PDF or however you wanted to save them, you're done. You don't have to stuff not one envelope or anything. And they will take care of the rest. And also one of the nice features of having them do it is the employees can log on. If they lose their W-2, they can log on and get their own copy of it. So that's something to consider there also. So that was the end of the PowerPoint. Now let me switch over to Sage here, and let me look at my list here so I make sure I don't miss what I wanted to show you. Okay, so if we go into accounts payable, we'll take care of that one real quick. Go into setup. I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of where it is in the vendor. So right here, click in the box that the vendor receives a 1099. Any kind of second TIN notice. If you receive the taxpayer identification notice, that you had was wrong, you would click that. And so if you didn't get a new one back, this puts an indicator on the 1099 that you're aware that it was wrong, but you just haven't received anything back. If they would tell you a new number, then you would uncheck this box and change their number right there. So the only time that you need to fill out the name is when this taxpayer ID number is a Social Security number, and the name John Doe right here, because he's billing you as A1 Electric Company. So if it was Social Security number, this would be the name in this recipient's tax ID that matches that Social Security number, and then it would be John Doe, DBA, A1 Electric Company. And then, of course, telling it what kind of 1099 that they are to receive. So that is where you set it up on the vendor. And then under task is where you start with doing the government reporting through Atrix. So we would choose the USA one. And I'm not going to go through this whole thing. I just, I thought this might happen. Let's see if this will upgrade it quickly here. The upgrades, because things are, especially at this time, they're constantly changing. So Atrix is always updating the forms out here. And this is all you would do to upgrade it. And then you have to go back in again to start doing the 1099 again. I just want to make sure everybody's aware of the screens that come up at the very beginning. Okay, well, if you don't mind, while that's doing that, I'm going to show you, I told you I was going to show you the item in job cost that has changed, because if you've been on version 14 and lower, this is a big change for you. That look right there. And this is the setup of jobs and job costs. So this is how you see the job listing. But one thing that's nice, let's see, that downtown. If I start typing in downtown, it's going to give me everything that has that in the name. So instead of seeing the tabs across the top, you actually see the tabs along the side. So the items that are on the tabs have not changed. It's just that things go down the side. And then down here, this view has changed here a little bit too. So I wanted to make sure that y'all saw that, because that is one big difference that came up in version 15. Okay, let's okay, so let me show you, while I'm over in job cost, I'm going to show you where that report is for the reconciliation. It's under entries and this GL reconciliation. Like I said, this is the canned one, so it would be in detail, and you can have it changed to where it's more of a summary form. But these questions right here, the only thing that you would want to fill out are the accounting dates. So you would do, put January 1 through 12/31, or you can reconcile job costs to general ledger every month, so then you would just put in the 1 month date right here. Of course, just make sure that everything is posted in job cost and just fill out the dates. And no accounts, no batches, no ranges, no nothing. So that is that report in job cost. And in cash management, the reports that were there under reconciliation, these first two, the bank reconciliation and the CM balance to GL. I'm going to go ahead and print this one. I just updated my sample data last night, so hopefully this is in balance here. Good. So it would list all of your cash accounts, and this is the balance that is in cash management, and then this is the balance that is in general ledger. And as long as everything is posted in GL, these two balances should always agree. Because then you know, if you're monitoring that, then when you do get time to go to your bank reconciliation, you should have no problem with that. Because the bank reconciliation would be like at the end of the prior month. This CM balance to GL, you want to look at it's looking at your future balance in GL. So that is a as of now balance is there. Oh, and the one thing I was wanting to show y'all, when they said make note of where your desktop configuration is. So you go to Tools and Options, and this right here, I'm using the default desktop, but this is the location of it. It does default to your C drive. Now if you customize it and you know, have different things on your favorites area, what I would recommend is that you put this file on your server and call it a folder desktop configurations, and then have each person name their desktop. Like I could put this one in, and this is my desktop configuration, because when it's on the server, anybody can go and pull your desktop configuration. Let's say that if the payroll person is out all of a sudden and you have to do the weekly payroll, and you have on the favorites, they have it to where for weekly payroll I do this and this and this and this and this. You can pull that to your desktop at your desk and follow the same order how they have theirs done without having to go sit at their desk in order to do it. So my recommendation is that this go onto the server, because then it's always backed up. But that's where you'd find out where your desktop configuration is located. So, all right. So this is completed now. So we go in to run the 1099s. This is where it's going to ask you, do you want to do it to the vendor or by a fiscal entity? Because when you have multiple companies in your data folder, you would pick which one you're wanting to run it for. And then what form are you running? You would choose, and then what reporting year. And this will go, it's going to follow where your AP settings are. So in this sample data, they still have it set at the year end of 2015. So if that is too far back, I can't even run it for 16. Then here is where you would answer the question of the minimum reporting, the $600. So that's where it asks you most of the questions right there. So that is pretty much the accounts payable side of things. So now we will go into payroll, and under the task you have the state e-filing and you have the federal. And so the W-2s and all are underneath the federal. So now, as you notice, this is all 2015, and the only thing that's out here for 2016 is the 941s. So with the upgrade of the year-end software is when they'll start putting on the 2016 W-2s out here. So when you're starting to do the W-2s, you choose which one you need, and then the 2015, and then it would start running through all of this, and you've probably, everybody has done this before if this isn't your first time, but I wanted to make sure that you were aware of where to go. Then there's also, when you go into the federal, you have the 940 report, and this would be for your year-end reconciliation, and it will print out the year-end form with the all years, the entire year's payroll, and then you would enter in how much that you have paid. See what other reports. What some people may not be aware of, there is like I know we don't have to go to the bank and give them that little EFTPS slip anymore, but sometimes it's helpful, like for this one, because this is for your 940 on here. If you wanted to do it for the quarter, and I'm going to go back to this one. So if you wanted to do it for the quarter, you could pull this and it would tell you how much you need to deposit for the third quarter for your 940. Instead of having to run some other reports, you can print this and it tells you right away how much you need to pay. Okay, so that is on the W-2s, how you get them started. Now, one thing I do want to make sure that everybody knows, if you have multiple payroll data folders for the same federal ID, when you start this often in the setup here of the federal e-filing, you can have the system merge all those data folders together. So you don't have to print out of different ones. It can take all of those and merge them together. And so the consultant would be able to help you with that if you weren't aware of that. And I know we only have a short time left, so I want to go into the ACA to show you. There's the ACA settings right here. These are the defaults. You need to get with your insurance company on what these need to be set to. So this is the default for your entire system. And then when you go to set up on an employee, we have the ACA coverage tab right here. So this employee can have different things than the default. So when it says default here, it means it's reading the setting that you have in the payroll settings. So these are the 4 questions that it asks, and you can have those different. Then here's the employee/dependents detail. So you can see what is here, and this is only, now this is sample data. It is in the year 2015. So on yours, this would only be 2016 here. But this is where you can change specific months right here. This down on the bottom, you only need to fill this area in down here if you are self-insured, because it wants a listing of the individuals that are covered, his family members or her family members, but we are on Robert up here. So that's where you would fill that out. Then there is also another place that you can get to that, and I know Carrie's been sending me with some questions, so I'm going to go over those questions and try to answer those in just a second. So under tasks here, the ACA Compliance, this might be easier here. So you want to make sure that you're in the right year. And then this is a listing of all your employees. So you could say to include terminated or not, so that they show up on the list. And if you had to fix several people, you could go in here and click on this detail, and it pulls this up and it changes them here. So you don't have to go, excuse me, in and out of each employee. Just have them all on the same grid there. So let me take a look here. Go down to the, I'm trying to find what some of the, let me see. Colleen asked about printing 1099s. Excuse me. If most clients print their own 1099s, and what are the paper requirements? That's a great question, because it prints all of the information that goes on the paper. The only paper that you need for 1099s is the perforated paper. Just needs to be blank. And the same for the W-2s. If you're going to print them out yourself and send them, then you just want it to be the plain paper. And it is the 4-up W-2 on the W-2. So you want to make sure it's still the 2-up that goes to the government, but it's the 4-up that goes to the employee. So just get the perforated paper, nothing printed on it. Anything so in the works in terms of changes? Suzanne wrote, ACA reporting changes for 2016 to 15. Anything still in the works in terms of changes? That it was changing so much at the end of the year, and this year, who knows what they're going to do. I don't know, you know, what the changes are that are still coming up. I can't really even keep up with all of that. There was a question, how do I set up the ACA default info, such as the coverage code? So the defaults are in PR settings, the ACA settings. These are your default codes. So the employees should read from this when they're a new employee. Question from Doug. Looks like it's a huge step backwards, but I don't know in terms of specifically what he was talking about going backwards on. So let me make sure if there's any other questions here. When do you use self-insured? From Tony. If your policy, your health insurance policy, if you are covering the expenses instead of the insurance covering the expenses, you're in essence self-insured. And so that's when you would need to fill out the bottom part. But if your health insurance, your employees deal with the health insurance company filing their claims, they get paid from them, then you are not self-insured. From Suzanne, we use version 14, uses TS main to access. When we upgrade to version 16, will it look like the screen that I'm showing? Yes, so this is the Sage desktop screen, but if you see here, this one, the payroll right there, if I launch from that, you'll, oh, well, I'm in payroll there. Let's see what, let me go to accounts payable. Okay, I guess I was being a module hog down there. It's saying I'm licensed for one user. Okay, so here, this, you'll probably feel more at home with this, but that is how you can launch into the TS main environment instead of the desktop. But you have to, on 16, you have to go to the Sage desktop first and then get to this. But when you launch it like this, you are taking up a license of AR until you close out of it. And so that's why if you can get used to the Sage desktop, it is better, because once you get out of doing a task or any kind of setup or anything, you are releasing that license right away. So Suzanne writes, we have two different payroll databases that are merged at year end for payroll reporting. Does the comment referring fix for multiple data folder environment refer to us? No, the fix for the multiple data folder items, that was for if you use purchasing and or inventory. So it had nothing to do with payroll. That's just fine. You can go to version 15 or version 16. That's not a problem. So Suzanne and Colleen are first time year end. So welcome to our world, and I hope that I was able to go deep enough for you. So Nina writes, so to be clear, if we set the ACA default, it only applies to new employees, not current. Is there a way to set up current? So yes, those apply to new employees, those defaults, new employees, because then once you start changing somebody for a current employee, that stays out there because you've changed them. But the default would be for the new ones. Okay, so Doug said he meant it's a huge step backwards. Using desktop over the current TS main looks like a step backwards. This that I've been using is what most softwares are going to, a tree type looking over here versus the TS main one. So, I mean, in the software world, everybody configures this, thinks of this setup here as a step forward because you can reach so many different things, and you also have your favorites area over here on the left. So Tony asks, will we get an update for the new overtime law? You'd have to watch for notifications from Sage on that, but I believe that usually the new overtime law is just regarding what they're going to get paid in overtime. So in the setup of the pay IDs themselves, when you pick the overtime, there may be something different in this pay type, or like, you know, a checkbox for weighted average. You know, there may be some change in this area. I really don't know what they're going to do with that. So I believe I caught everybody's questions, and look at that, we started at 9:04 and it's 10:05 now. So let me see if that was another question coming in. So Suzanne wrote, if we have roles set up and some are not using certain modules, or they are only AP users and don't have access to payroll or job cost or general ledger, is AP the only tree that will show up in their tree? So that's a question. If yes, they should only see that, but then like in the tree right here, that if they don't have set up to like deductions, you can say don't show things that they don't have access to. So that means deductions wouldn't even show up. But there's also the, if you don't click that, then it would be grayed out. They can see it, but they can tell that they don't have access to it. So yes, they would only see the modules that they can get into. So that is all of the questions, and let me go back to the PowerPoint here and show it to you in a nice one here. If you would like to get a copy of this slideshow, if you could please send an email to Carrie Shoup, Carrie S at onpoint-software.com. She'll be happy to send you a copy of this PowerPoint. And then also, if you have any other questions that either if I missed it or you didn't have a chance to get it typed in, send her an email and we'll be happy to answer any questions and get you some help that you need. So happy that everybody attended, and hope that we were able to enlighten you to some of the features and some of the do's and don'ts, and just let us know if we can help in any way. Thank you.